welcome back to Horror News Roundup, my weekly news show dedicated to the fascinating things happening in the world of horror. We'll start with the ever-prolific John Squires over at Bloody Disgusting with an article titled Dario Argento's Phenomena Getting a TV Series Adaptation from Italian Company. The article states Variety is reporting that Italy's Titanus production is behind the series. Phenomena, the series, is said to reimagine the world of Dario Argento's 1985 horror movie, delivering a unique blend of supernatural intrigue and high-stakes drama. From writers and creators Nicola Guadagnone and Manetti, the series follows Jennifer Corvino, an American student at a fencing academy in the glamorous Dolomites, who harbors a secret psychic link with insects. As Jennifer navigates the challenges of being the new girl at school, she must also confront a series of brutal murders. It also states that the series is currently being pitched to prospective partners and broadcasters. So to be honest, I'm not that familiar with those creators' works, but I'm intrigued by the idea of bringing this show to the small screen. I think in general that could have a lot of problems with it, the idea of really leaning in on drama and stuff like that. That's completely like an antithesis to the original film, but that being said, I'm a big fan of Guadagnino's reimagining of Dario Argento's original classic Suspiria. I mean, I do like the original better, but I still do like Guadagnino's vision, and I think that you can definitely take this material and expand it in different and interesting ways, and I am intrigued to see what they do with such a weird, just oddball kind of movie that is such a classic, but also one that I feel like is a bit underappreciated, especially in comparison to some of Argento's other works. It's not necessarily the first one that comes off the tongue when people are talking about his works. They talk about Suspiria and Deep Red and Tenebrae and stuff like that. But to me, Phenomena is just an excellent film that I really enjoy. And I'll definitely see it. I mean, if it comes out and I can watch it, I'm not going to like hold my breath in anticipation to see what's going to happen. And I don't have like super high expectations for it, but nonetheless, I'm kind of intrigued to see what could happen. I think Argento is such a weird filmmaker that when people kind of try to delve into his work, it could really, you have to bring your own personal vision to it. You cannot be trying to just rinse and repeat what's already been done. Guadagnino was a really good example, in my opinion, even though Argento did not like the remake, but I like both versions of Suspiria. And I think that Phenomena has potential to be reimagined in a really exciting way for the new generation. So yeah, definitely some intriguing news there. Next up, we have another article by John Squires over at Bloody Disgusting. This time, it's Eden Lake filmmaker directing Clayface movie written by Mike Flanagan. In the article, it states Mike Flanagan is writing a Clayface movie for DC, and that The Hollywood Reporter confirms this afternoon that a director has been found. Flanagan himself will not be directing the upcoming Clayface movie, with James Watkins from Eden Lake, The Woman in Black, Speak No Evil, will be taking a seat in the director's chair. Warner Bros. Will release DC's live-action Clayface movie on September 11th, 2026. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the budget is supposed to be around $40 million, and it's going to be a Hollywood horror tale centering on a B-movie actor who injects himself with a substance to keep himself relevant, and then obviously becomes Clayface. So as a Batman fan, this is really exciting news. I'm excited to see Clayface in live action. That's going to be super cool. Mike Flanagan is someone who's very hit or miss for me, and I'm not too familiar with James Watkins' work, but I am excited to see this movie nonetheless. I think this new phase in the DC universe, we'll obviously see how it goes, but I love the idea of just making a straight-up horror movie. I know James Wan was talking about making an Aquaman spinoff that was going to be a horror movie, but I feel like this is a direction that a lot of these superhero movies, they don't really go and explore different genres too much, so I would love to see some more just pure horror done within the superhero umbrella. So Clayface, horror movie, Mike Flanagan, James Watkins. We have a release date set and everything, so I'm very intrigued and excited to see this movie. Next up, we have some box office news, with Osgood Perkins' The Monkey opening to an estimated $14.2 million domestically, which puts it at number 2 on the charts behind the new Captain America movie, which obviously had a pretty big fall in its second weekend. Now, like I said during my review, I have very mixed feelings about this movie. I think it's a pretty good movie overall, but it's not one I can give a huge and blanket recommendation to all horror fans to go and see. I've kind of been disappointed somewhat so far with 2025 horror movies, to be honest, because The Monkey and Wolfman were definitely two of my more anticipated films. Hopefully the rest of the year we have some better ones for the theatrical releases at least. But that being said, I'm still glad the movie is doing well in this day and age. It's nice to see filmmakers like Osgood Perkins getting rewarded, even for films that necessarily don't hit the mark that I was hoping for, but he's definitely a filmmaker that I want to continue to see his work develop and get bigger and more bolder projects that he can undertake on bigger budgets. So films like this doing well at the box office will do well for his career overall. So that is good news. Now moving on to the next piece of news, we have another article from Bloody Disgusting, this time by Mike Wilson. Bloober team entering partnership with Konami for new title. In the article, it states that the announcement states that Konami and Bloober team have inked a deal to develop a new game codenamed Project G. The game will be based on a Konami IP and will be developed for the PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series. So that's kind of intriguing news. I'm a big fan of the Silent Hill 2 remake. I'm a big fan of the entire series, of course. And I've always been someone who's kind of had a soft spot for Bloober, even though they've been hated for years now. And in my opinion, maybe overly hated. Some of their games are pretty solid, at least on a visual level. I've always been intrigued by their work. And I think Silent Hill 2 was a really great game from them and a huge step up in the gameplay department. So this is exciting news. I'm intrigued to see what it is that they're going to be making. Obviously, they have their own game that's coming out as well, the Chronos, the new Dawn game. It's just been recently announced that'll be coming out next, and then they'll probably go onto this Project G. But nonetheless, exciting news, especially if you're a video gamer that likes horror games. I hope it's a horror game. I would expect it to be, since that's been most of Bloober Team's work. Next up is some more video game related news from Mike Wilson over at Bloody Disgusting. WB Games shuts down Fear and condemned developer Monolith Productions. Now, those two games are definitely iconic horror games from the Xbox 360 PS3 era, and I'm definitely a fan of the Condemned series for sure. I love playing Condemned 2 for the PlayStation 3, and this is sad news in general. I know they weren't making a horror game at the moment. They were working on a Wonder Woman open world game that also got canceled. But in general, I think there's just a lot of sad and disturbing news coming out of the video game industry just on a consistent basis over the last couple of years. And this is just another piece of the puzzle that has really made the video game industry just a lot more of a just kind of sad place, and it's in a sad state of affairs at the moment. There's a lot of great games coming out, a lot of great game developers, but there's so many mass layoffs and cancellation of games and game studios shutting down that it's just a really disturbing trend. And this is just yet another piece of news in a long line of news that's just really depressing. Next up, we have a brand new 4K release that came out yesterday, a 4K release from the Criterion Collection for Guillermo del Toro's Chronos. That's exciting news if you're a big fan of that movie. I'm a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro's work, and I think Chronos is definitely a really good work from him, definitely one you should check out if you like some of his other works. I can't wait to see his new Frankenstein movie coming out, and I love to see 4K releases for older movies that aren't necessarily huge hits within the horror genre, and I think Chronos definitely fits that bill. Obviously, it had already been part of the Criterion Collection before, but it's nice to see them continue to go through their backlog and make 4K restorations of all these great classic films. Next up is some horror-adjacent news brought to you by Lauren Malici and Tara Bennett over at GamesRadar.com. The headline states, Resident Evil director says his adaptation of a forgotten George R.R. Martin short story is an R-rated fairy tale with bone-crunching violence. So essentially, it's a little preview article of a SFX magazine article, which has Paul W.S. Anderson talking about his new film, In the Lost Lands. And in the article, Anderson is quoted as saying, it's an adult fairy tale with bone-crunching violence and horrific surprises. Looks-wise, it's very different to anything I've done before. I really wanted to embrace the mythic fairy tale quality of it. So it's an R-rated fairy tale, that's for sure. So he also states that the concept was just fabulous. It has everything audiences like from George's work. There are dark, interesting characters and the surprising narrative reverses. This was a chance to broaden out that Martin universe and give audiences a taste of something that was both a little familiar but also a little fresh. So I'm not a huge George R.R. Martin fan. I haven't watched Game of Thrones or anything like that. But I am a person who follows Paul W.S. Anderson's career with interest. I'm a fan of his work, especially his earlier work. And this is a film that has not really been getting a lot of attention. I've really had to dig deep to try and get any kind of news on this film. The marketing has not been very strong, at least here in America. And it definitely does not feel like they're trying to target this audience at all, which makes sense when you look at Anderson's other movies. They've never really done well in the American market. They always are targeted more for an international audience, an Asian or European market, more so than just an American market. So I can understand on paper why they may want to go and try and target other audiences, but I think after the failure of Monster Hunter, it would be really smart to try and get as many people in the seats as possible across the entire world. But that being said, this is still an intriguing looking film. I'm very intrigued to see the next step in his career. It reminds me a lot of Scott Stewart's 2011 film Priest. A lot of people have been bringing up that comparison. It just kind of has that vibe of early Resident Evil, Underworld, sort of weird fantasy, horror, action, hybrid stuff, early 2000s aesthetics. That's really intriguing to me to see that kind of brought into a modern filmmaking landscape. That being said, though, I don't think this film's going to do well at the box office. I think it'll probably get critically reviled, but I'm just hoping I can enjoy it. I'm definitely going to go and see it in the theaters, and I'll definitely be bringing you guys a review of that movie, so look out for that. It'll be coming out on March 7th. Next up, we have an article by Alex DiVincenzo in Bloody Disgusting. University of Pittsburgh Library System adds Blair Witch Project materials to Horror Studies collection. The article states that the University of Pittsburgh Library System has added archival materials from the Blair Witch Project to its Horror Studies collection. The acquisition includes production materials and promotional items, like the infamous missing persons flyers, along with reviews, articles, games, comics, and other tie-in media, demonstrating the 1999 film's impact. This is really exciting news. Of course, the Horror Studies collection was really created in memory of George Romero, who was a big icon of the Pittsburgh area, and I definitely think Blair Witch Project is deserving of being put in a place like a Horror Studies collection, right? It's a huge part of the history of the genre, a huge part of the understanding of the sort of marketing that you could accomplish in the early days of the internet. That was obviously one of the most successful marketing campaigns of all time. It's definitely an iconic film that I enjoy, and I definitely think it's a huge piece of horror history, and I love the fact that it's going to be studied for generations to come. I think that any sort of academic endeavor which is going to try and enrich our understanding of the horror genre and its history is hugely beneficial to fans for generations to come, and I'm definitely excited to continue to see that build within a place like the University of Pittsburgh Library System. I think that's really fun and cool, and I think Blair Witch Project will continue to be an iconic film for decades to come. And the final piece of news is brought to you by who else? John Squires over at Bloody Disgusting. Hell of a Summer poster, Finn Wolfhard's slasher throwback gets a new release date. The article states Neon had originally set an April 18th release date for the summer camp slasher throwback Hell of a Summer, but the horror comedy has received a new release date this afternoon. It will now be released on April 4th, 2025, and will star Finn Wolfhard, who is the co-writer and director of the upcoming movie. Now, when I went to see The Monkey in theaters, this was one of the previews that was shown before the movie, and it caught my eyes. A kind of a funny movie. The trailer was well edited and things like that. It's another slasher horror comedy, which has really been in vogue as of recently, right? We've had a big resurgence in slasher films, especially of the kind of 90s, postmodern, or at least kind of funny and self-reflective slasher films. That's kind of been a big thing recently, and this seems to be another one in that kind of vein. So it does kind of seem intriguing. I'm not going to probably see it in theaters or anything like that, but the fact that it's getting a theatrical release is cool. There's a lot of subgenres that are right now having a resurgence. Slashers are definitely one of the big ones, and this seems like a film that'll probably have at least a moderate level of success. So that's intriguing. April 4th is the new release date for that film. So that's all for this week's Horror News Roundup. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and ring the bell for notifications, and I'll see you all next time.